The metallic clang of the heavy steel gate slamming shut behind me was a sound that never quite left my bones. It rattled in my ribcage long after I'd clocked out, a reminder of where I spent the majority of my waking life. I'm Jessica. For 6 years, I've been a corrections officer at Greystone Penitentiary. They tell you in training that you need to be a wall, unfeeling, sturdy, and impenetrable. They tell you that empathy is a weakness that will be exploited. They tell you never to look an inmate in the eye for too long. But before I tell you how I broke the cardinal rule, how I let the wall crumble, I need to ask you something. If you enjoy stories about the lines we cross and the secrets we keep in the dark, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I have a lot more to confess, and you won't want to miss where this story goes. Now, back to the block. It was a Tuesday in November when the transfer bus arrived. The rain was hammering against the plexiglass windows of the processing unit, turning the world outside into a gray smear. I was working intake, logging personal effects, checking paperwork. That's when I saw her. Serena. She didn't look like she belonged here. I know everyone says that, but with Serena, it was visceral. She stood in the line of women in orange jumpsuits, but she held herself with a posture that suggested she was standing in a ballroom, not a prison intake center. She was striking, pale porcelain skin that seemed to catch the harsh fluorescent buzzing overhead, and long, dark brown hair that was messy but still managed to frame a face of sharp, aristocratic angles. When I called her name to step forward, she didn't shuffle or look at her feet like the others. She looked right at me. Her eyes were a piercing, icy blue, creating a startling contrast against her dark hair. There was no fear in them, only a calm, terrifying assessment. Name? I asked, my voice automatic, monotone. Serena, she answered. Her voice was low, smooth, lacking the rough edges that usually echoed in this room. Last name, I snapped, trying to reassert the power dynamic. She gave it to me, but she held my gaze the entire time. As I fingerprinted her, holding her hand to press the ink onto the card, I felt a jolt. Her skin was cool, her fingers slender. It was a routine physical contact. I'd done it 1,000 times, but my heart hammered a strange, erratic rhythm against my badge. I pulled away too quickly. She noticed. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. The first few weeks were a game of cat and mouse, though I couldn't tell you who was the cat. I was assigned to C Block, her new home. My job was to watch her, to ensure she followed the schedule, to keep the peace. But I found myself watching her for entirely different reasons. I watched how she navigated the yard. She didn't join the cliques. She sat alone on a concrete bench, reading. Always reading. I watched the way the sunlight hit her face during that single hour of outdoor time, turning her pale complexion luminous. I found myself making excuses to walk past her cell during count. Officer Jessica, she would say. Not guard. Not boss. Just my name, spoken like it was a secret between us. Inmate. I'd reply, but my voice lacked the bite it was supposed to have. The shift happened in the library. I was supervising the afternoon rotation. It was quiet, the smell of old paper and dust masking the usual scent of industrial cleaner. Serena was in the corner, struggling to reach a book on a high shelf. It was a history of art, a heavy, hardcover thing. Against my better judgment, against every regulation in the handbook, I walked over. Which one? I asked, standing just behind her. I was close enough to smell her shampoo, the generic soap provided by the state, which somehow smelled like flowers on her. She turned, startled, and we were inches apart. The air in the aisle suddenly felt thick, charged with static. She looked up at me, those blue eyes wide. The Renaissance one, she whispered. I reached up, my arm brushing against her shoulder, and pulled the book down. As I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. It wasn't an accident. I knew it, and she knew it. The contact lingered for a second too long. Thank you, Jessica, she said softly. Watch yourself, Serena, I murmured, but I wasn't warning her about the rules. I was warning her about me. About us. From that day on, the dynamic shattered. We developed a language of our own. A language of glances across the mess hall, of subtle nods, of notes hidden inside library books. I would leave a book on her bunk during inspections. She would return it with a tiny folded piece of paper tucked into the spine. I feel like I'm suffocating in here, one note read. Until I see you walking the tier. Then I can breathe. I should have reported it. I should have had her transferred. Instead, I wrote back. Keep your head down. I'm on shift tonight. Night shifts became our sanctuary. The prison at night is a different beast. Haunted, echoing, but quieter. When the lights dimmed and the other inmates were asleep, I would stand by the bars of her cell. We couldn't touch. The cameras were always watching, always recording, but we could talk. We talked about everything. She told me about her life before, about the mistakes she made, about a childhood that sounded lonely despite being privileged. I told her about my apartment, my cat, my fears of dying alone, the numbness I felt working in a cage day after day. You're not like them, she told me one night, her hands gripping the bars, her knuckles white. You wear the uniform, but you don't have the eyes of a guard. You have kind eyes. I'm not supposed to be kind, Serena, I whispered, checking the corridor for the sergeant. Then why are you here? She asked. Why are you risking your job standing here with me? I don't know, I lied. But I did know. I was falling in love with her. It was a terrifying, suffocating realization. I was in love with a woman I was paid to keep locked up. A woman who, in the eyes of the state, was a number, a criminal. But in my eyes, she was the only splash of color in a black and white world. The tension broke 3 months in. There was a lockdown. A fight in the yard had spiraled out of control, and the whole facility was on high alert. Tensions were razor thin. I was doing a final sweep of the cells. When I got to Serena's cell, she was pacing. She looked frantic. Jessica, she breathed when she saw me. I unlocked the cell door. I shouldn't have. It was a firing offense. A criminal offense. But the fear in her eyes overrode my training. I stepped inside and pulled the door almost shut behind me, creating a sliver of privacy in the blind spot of the hallway camera. Are you okay? I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't answer. She just surged forward. She closed the distance between us and pressed her hands against my chest, right over the badge that separated us. I froze, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. I was scared, she whispered, looking up at me. I thought they were going to move us. I thought I wouldn't see you. I'm here, I said, my voice thick. She rose on her tiptoes, her face inches from mine. I looked at her, really looked at her. The pale curve of her neck, the desperation in her blue eyes, the slight part of her lips. The orange jumpsuit faded away. The concrete walls dissolved. It was just us. I brought my hand up to cup her cheek. Her skin was burning hot. Jessica, she whispered again, and this time it sounded like a prayer. I kissed her. It was frantic and desperate, fueled by months of suppressed longing and the adrenaline of the lockdown. It tasted like danger. It felt like falling off a cliff. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, trying to merge our bodies together in that tiny, cramped space. For a moment, I wasn't a guard. I was just a woman, desperately in love with another woman, stealing a moment of passion in the belly of a concrete beast. We broke apart when the radio on my belt crackled to life. Officer Miller, report to Sector 4. The reality crashed back in. I was Officer Miller. She was inmate 8940. I pulled away, my chest heaving, my lips burning. Serena looked at me, her eyes wide and dark, her chest rising and falling in time with mine. I have to go, I gasped, backing toward the door. Don't leave me, she said, reaching out. I can't stay, I said, my hand on the cold steel of the door. If they find me here. I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew the consequences. I would be fired, prosecuted. She would be sent to solitary, or worse, transferred to a max security facility halfway across the country. I locked the door between us. The click of the mechanism was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It sounded like a gunshot. I walked away down the corridor, adjusting my uniform, trying to wipe the flush from my face. I went back to my duties. I did the head counts. I broke up arguments. I acted the part of the stern, unyielding authority figure. But every time I walked past C-Block, every time I saw that flash of pale skin and dark hair behind the bars, my heart stopped. We are living on borrowed time. I know that. Eventually, someone will notice the lingering glances. Someone will find a note. Someone will check the logs and see how much time I spend in her sector. Every day I walk into this prison, I am walking into a trap of my own making. I am the captor, and I am the captive. I hold the keys to her cell, but she holds the key to everything that matters to me. Tonight, I have the night shift again. I know she'll be waiting by the bars, listening for the jingle of my keys, looking for me in the dark. And I know, God help me, I'll go to her. Because in this place of punishment and penance, she is my only salvation. And I am terrified of the day the gate slams shut, and I'm left on the outside, looking in.